I'm an industrial designer, and I think I probably first maybe saw your solicitations years ago, maybe Industrial Design Magazine. Um, but when I first moved to Los Angeles, I lived in Manhattan Beach and realized the connection there. And at some point in time, I actually reached out and called Doug, and we spoke ever so briefly on the phone. But it's taken me 40 years. I'm not really that old, but 40 years to actually follow up on that. Um, I've always been intrigued by the idea. So when I had this recent idea, it was just kind of a natural, I got to reach out and do that. I've always been intrigued by uh, optical illusions, and because this is a cube and it's three-dimensional, as you move past it, you actually get this image, this feeling that it's actually moving. So I've always been intrigued by that, and that is that tumbling block form is such a classic, in design and architecture. We see it so many places. And years ago, I happened on this idea of illusions like that, in particular in the haunted house at Disneyland, where you see the ghosts with you, and then there's the statues that have the concave faces, and the same thing happens there. When you move past them, it feels like they're looking at you. And so this does kind of a similar thing. And so I don't know, I had some awareness of that 3D form, and just having, I think I've really been much more aware of your products since, with the internet and your weekly newsletters. And when I saw it, I thought, oh, that could be a really interesting thing. And it is such a classic element that it can fit on a high-end product, even a farmhouse project. So I thought, oh, we got to develop this. So we started out with drawings. Andrew did the renderings and the drawings. I'm still old style rendering. I still render by marker, so I don't do 3D rendering, ironically. So we started there, and then with his ability to do the 3D printing, we were able to go through the process of how it would be made, adjusting for form and shape and just literally physical feel. At first we had kind of like this, when you grabbed it, it felt sharp on the backside. So we softened the backside and made it much more comfortable in the hand.
In my mind, something feels right, and it's kind of the route I go with it. I don't know that I have a specific formula to get there, but I think through many iterations, slowly, refine the design, get there, and see what comes from that. As for designing this part, my dad, I guess he brought me the drawings, his idea, and I thought that was, it was interesting, it was cool. Wanted to see what we could do with that. And personally, I spend a lot of time on the computer, and I do a lot of 3D modeling and 3D printing. And I figured I could take the design to the next level. I could model that out, which was interesting and fun to do. And then actually making a physical prototype really helped.
Yeah, I think my process tends to be more problem solving. I like someone to give me a brief and say, this is a need we have. What can you do with it? This was, some of that, but because I came up with the idea on my own, I had to, say, okay, this will go in this particular location. My day-to-day work is I design lighting fixtures and ceiling fans. So I have a lot of background in home furnishings. So, seeing this form, I knew there were opportunities for it in the market. And so that was, I guess I combined both approaches. It was interesting though, the concept of part aspect of this, because I typically work with vendors in China. And so I'll send my drawings, and in many cases, those vendors will do the 3D renderings for them. So my process there is, go through reviewing drawings, reviewing 3D renderings, and sometimes, in many cases, I'll never see the product until I see it in the store. That's a change, and that's kind of answering the other questions. That's one of the changes that's happened in part because of the pandemic. But in this case, it was interesting too to have, we were basically making one part. So it's a lot simpler than making a lighting fixture where you have to work with 10 vendors to get everything and get it to come together. But it was great just to have that ability to say, Andrew, let's try this, let's change this. And so that was a more immediately gratifying process than I'm used to. So it was fun to do it that way.